Grandpadding had ended hours ago, but Vine still felt the weight of its fanciness on her shoulders. The vows, the applause, and the overwhelming gaze of strangers had faded, replaced by an eerie silence in the penthouse she now shared with her husband. The bedroom was spacious, yet it felt suffocating. Vine sat on the edge of the bed, fidgeting with the hem of her dress. Jungkook's mother's voice echoed in her mind. Don't expect him to change him for you. His mother said with a cold smile, pulling Vine aside before the ceremony. Jungkook isn't the type to care about anyone. Your job is to keep your head down and not embarrass this family. That's all. Vine had nodded politely, hiding the sting of those words behind a forced smile. But now, sitting alone in the room, the words felt heavier. A few minutes later, the door clicked open and Jungkook stepped inside. Jungkook, you can take the bed. I will sleep on the couch, he said flatly, walking towards the closet. Vine blinked, caught off guard. There's enough space, Jungkook. It's fine. He cut her off, his tone leaving no room for argument. She watched as he disappeared into the closet, coming back moments later in a plain white t-shirt and sweatpants. He didn't spare her a glance as he grabbed a pillow and headed for the couch. For a moment, she considered saying something, but the weight of his mother's words held her back. Don't expect him to care. She quietly lay down on the bed, staring up at the ceiling. The room felt colder than before. The early morning light filtered through the curtains, casting a glow over the room. Wine stirred awake, groggy but grateful for the rare peaceful night. She sat up slowly, reaching for her phone on the table. She unlocked it to check the time, but froze when she saw the notification. It was a message from an unknown number. Her heart sank as she opened it, her hands trembling. You're still mine. Don't forget who's in control. The air seemed to leave her lungs. She clutched the phone tightly. Minho. She had deleted his old number, but this had to be him. She was lost in her thoughts when her phone vibrated again. It was again from the same number. Meet me at the address I sent, 3 p.m. today, or everyone will see those pictures. He wasn't bluffing. She knew he had her photos, but falling to a point where he would blackmail her about it, she never expected this. Vine stood abruptly, her mind racing. She thought about telling Jungkook about it, but then his mother's words echoed in her mind once again. Keep your head down, don't cause problems. She couldn't tell Jungkook. The thought of Jungkook finding out filled her with dread. Jungkook woke up and saw her panicking, walking back and forth. Jungkook, what are you doing? Lost in her thoughts, as soon as she heard his voice, she gasped and froze. Why? Nothing. I was just finding my slippers. Jungkook, you're wearing them. Vine looked at her feet and closed her eyes tightly as she realized. She huffed and said, Oh, I'm going to the washroom. She said and went inside the washroom, sighing. But she still couldn't stop thinking about it. She wouldn't expect anything from Jungkook. If his own mother didn't believe he could care, how could she? The clock struck 3 p.m., and Vine had no other option, so she nervously stepped into the apartment Minho lives in with an apartment mate. Minho sat across the room, his smirk as smug as ever, clearly enjoying her discomfort. Minho, I knew you would come. You always listen so well, he said, leaning back in his chair. Vine gritted her teeth, forcing herself to remain calm. Vine, what do you want, Minho? He chuckled. Straight to the point, huh? I miss that about you. Fine. Don't play games. Just tell me what you want so I can leave. Minho's smirk widened as he leaned closer and said, what I want, Wine, is simple. You stay in line and do what I say. Or he tapped his phone screen, showing a folder of photos that made her stomach churn. Wine clenched her fist, her voice trembling but firm. When did you even take these photos? You can't keep doing this. I'm not your puppet. Minho laughed, a cruel sound that echoed in the small apartment. But you are. You're mine, Wine. Always have been. Suddenly he grabbed her wrist, pulling her closer. Wine gasped, trying to wrench herself free. Let go, Minho. Not so fast. You think you can just walk in here, make demands, and leave? You owe me. He hissed, his grip tightening. Wine's heart pounded in fear. She tried to push him away, but he was stronger, his smug expression fueling her panic. In the living room of the apartment, Jungkook leaned against the counter, waiting for his friend Taejun to finish a phone call. Jungkook, so, any updates on the deal? He asked as Taejun hung up. Taejun nodded and said, yeah, but give me a second. Minho is in his room with his sister Yunji. They are loud as usual. He rolled his eyes. Jungkook frowned, his ears catching a sound that froze him in place. It was a scream from Minho's room, and his heart stopped because he knew that voice. Taejun, Jungkook said slowly, his tone calm but laced with danger. That's not his sister. Taejun blinked, confused. What are you talking about? It Jungkook didn't wait for an explanation. His jaw clenched as he strode toward the hallway. Taejun followed, trying to process it, but Jungkook wasn't listening. Another muffled cry came from behind the closed door, and this time Jungkook's patience snapped. Without hesitation, he kicked the door open. The force of it startled Minho, who turned to see Jungkook standing in the doorway, his eyes dark with fury. What the? Minho began, but Jungkook's glare silenced him. Pine was on the floor, her wrists red from Minho's grip, her face pale with fear. She looked up at Jungkook, her lips trembling. Jungkook, she whispered. He didn't reply, his gaze fixed on Minho. Slowly, he stepped into the room. Taejun stood frozen, his face pale as he realized what was happening. Jungkook's voice was low and cold. What were you doing to her? Minho tried to regain his composure, laughing nervously. Relax, John. It's just a misunderstanding. She Jungkook didn't let him finish. He grabbed Minho by the collar, slamming him against the wall. Did you give her those injuries? Minho struggled against Jungkook's grip, his face turning red. It's not what you think. Jungkook leaned in closer, his voice deadly. You think you can force my wife and get away with it? Vine watched, her chest tight with a mix of relief and fear. Jungkook's anger was unlike anything she had ever seen, and for the first time, she realized just how dangerous he could be. Agent finally stepped in, his voice shaky. Jungkook, let him go. We can sort this out. Jungkook shot him a cold glare, and Taejun immediately stepped back, swallowing hard. Turning back to Minho, Jungkook released him with a shove, letting him fall to the floor. Jungkook turned to Vine, his gaze softening slightly as he held out a hand. Let's go. I will deal with him later. Vine hesitated but took his hand, allowing him to pull her to her feet. He was about to walk away with her, but she didn't move. He looked back at her, and then at her trembling hand, confused. Wine. He has my photos. Jungkook's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing as he turned back to Minho, who was still slumped against the wall. Jungkook, where are they? Minho stammered, his hands raised defensively. I I deleted them. I swear there's nothing left. Jungkook's lips pressed into a thin line as he stepped closer, towering over Minho. Do I look like I believe you? His tone was calm, but his hand shot out, grabbing Minho's phone from the floor. He tossed it to Minho. Unlock it, now. Minho hesitated, but one look at Jungkook's expression had him scrambling to obey. His fingers fumbled as he unlocked the phone and handed it back. Jungkook scrolled through the phone, his expression darkening as he opened the folder. The photos were there, every single one of them. His grip on the phone tightened, and for a moment, Ryan thought he might crush it. He looked at Minho, his voice eerily calm. You lied. Do we continue?